Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and we got an update for all of you on Night Shadows tonight with Larry, and a lot going on, and I think it deserves some commentary. It's not going to be a long update, but sufficient, I think, to get you up to speed on some of the background behind all this. Hi, Larry. How are you doing?
Hello, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem at all. Why don't we start? You on your blog forwarded a thing on. We can get into earth changes maybe first. Sea currents are changing. What's the deal on that? I know it's bringing bad weather to Europe, Russia. I think it has to do with the polar vortexes as well, and probably even maybe weather wars. What did that article have to say? I couldn't link to it for some reason.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it really jumped out at me because of the fact that I very well remember your show that you had with Art Bell, the old original Art Bell, years ago, and then just basically after that show with Art Bell, Art and Whitley Strieber co-produced a book that came out talking about some type of, weather changes, and, that was after your show, and then later the movie Day After Tomorrow came out built off of that book,
And I know this, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention what was so interesting was a lot of what you projected are events that would be projected in your interview, and I believe, if I'm right, I can't remember now exactly, but I think, what was it, 3 hours or 2 hours, 3 hours or something long? You talked quite a while there.
4 hours, I think we were on.
Okay.
Yep. 4
hours. You really laid out an incredible scenario with a polar shift and what would occur, and then they wrote the book, and then the movie Day After Tomorrow came out, and, of course, everybody immediately said that was the most incredible fiction stuff they'd ever had, but that was fiction. And what's interesting, I was looking at Yahoo News, which is mainstream media, and something jumped out at me a day or so ago, and I researched it and came up with the data. Let me read you the headline, though. It's kind of long here. It says, Real Life. Yeah, it says Real Life, and I thought, whoa, okay. Real Life, 2004, fiction disaster film, Day After Tomorrow, in the making with real ramifications for the world at large, the Atlantic Rim countries, especially those in Europe. And it talks about the loss of the AMOC, and for those that don't understand that, the AMOC is Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, and we know that's the Gulf Stream basic movement there that goes all the way up to England, from America. And what they're reporting in the article is that the AMOC has collapsed and will bring catastrophic events. And I posted on my blog today a picture that they showed in their image, and it very, very much resembles the Day After Tomorrow scenario that we've heard about. And you and I have talked recently, Stuart, about the incredible weather changes. Now, I haven't heard the show, but I know that Coast to Coast AM, I got a note from Mitch Buckruss, and you're familiar with him, and he's been warning, and we're supposed to have done a show on Coast to Coast last night about the pole shift, and he said it's sooner than you think.
Yeah, I believe it is. We are starting now to get some, well, it's like I said on the post for this show, if people don't really understand what's going on around them, they're in denial. It's everywhere. What's happening to you guys down there? You got, 6-7 inches of snow? 10 degrees or less?
Yeah, they warned us we was going to get about an inch. We got 6 to 8 inches. Heavy winds, trees falling. I mean, really incredible cold. You know, I talked to you today. You guys have had minus 15, and it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. My wife went today to see her mother, and she stopped at the store where some Indians were, and I'm talking Choctaw Indians, of course, and they were in a discussion, she said, about all of them are having aches and pains. Their bones are aching. Something is happening. And, of course, Darnette's been telling me she had a fall, but and thank you, people, for the prayers. She's doing a little bit better. And so, but, you know, everybody's aching and hurting, and it's like the electromagnetic field, and we know the sun has twisted things, and it's actually got a blank face, no sunspot, 0 sunspots, and is really twisting our geomagnetic field. And people are complaining, but it's not just us, it's the animals. They are sensing something is changing.
Yes. Yeah, and we've got massive anomalies in the sun, which we've been warning about for a long, long time. And there have been changes. You remember there was a scientist over there in Europe, and he posted stuff about the ocean currents. They were going into eddies, and they weren't performing like they were. Well, now you've got an article where that says they've come to virtually a dead stop. Well, those currents are what keep New England and up through there warm, along with England and that area, and if that stops, I remember reading somewhere that the elite were quite sure, so evidently they've known about this ocean current stoppage for some time, that the elite were going to have to leave England and probably come over here. Not that that's going to do them much good, but that's what they think it will. In other words, they're kind of like you guys down south. You don't bury your water pipes very deep because you don't have to.
Yeah.
Well, it quick freezes, and you're all done. Up here, we have to bury our water pipes about 6 to 7 feet deep.
Wow.
To avoid the frost lines. Because we can go down to 30, 40 below zero. And I was just reading an article where Russia, some of the temperatures in Russia were 40 below. Is that right?
Yeah. And that's what this article was really concerned about. And I saw related articles and read them. And we're not getting much press from anywhere else in the world right now, but Europe apparently is getting the polar vortexes also, and people are dying. They say people are literally freezing to death in their homes. And you know what's striking? You know, you and I talked today, and you were talking about how this wind lately, it comes right through the walls of your house, and you're so
yes.
right.
Yeah, and it's raw. It's more raw than I ever remember having it, where you really, even though you jack your temperature way up in the house, it seems like the furnaces just can't keep up with it. So it's so raw. I don't know what other word to apply to it. Here I got a headline: Europe cold weather death toll rising. More than 20 people are now known to have died as icy temperatures continue to grip much of Europe. Is this weather warfare, do you think? Or is this just simply because the Earth is wobbling and things are just going out of kilter? I favor the last, not the first.
Yeah, well, what I did, also I read another article that came out today talking about or warning about the whole Earth seems to be vibrating or ringing, and something is wrong. Now, we do, I think the last show we talked about a liquid mantle around the core of the planet that was doing some odd stuff and making changes deep below the ground. And we're beginning to have volcanic activity all over the planet, everywhere. I think one in Costa Rica went off today. And we're having earthquakes, here, there, and everywhere. And they're really concerned about Hawthorne, Nevada, which is very close to San Andreas. We're seeing all of this stuff. And these changes, I'm very concerned, Stuart, because of my white buffalo vision, that the partial pole shift that was a warning that I was shown is very, very near. And
I think it is.
And of course, Mitch Botras is reporting, and on Coast to Coast last night, I didn't hear the show, but his notes of warning were the fact that we're a lot closer to a polar shift. And he's not really talking magnetic. He's talking a polar shift than we really know.
Yeah, either a crustal shift or the whole Earth kind of starts to wobble. Well, we know that it does. The Inuit have warned NASA about it. There were people in Norway that had an incident over there. We've had reports from all over ourselves about the sun not rising exactly where it should, the moon not rising or setting exactly where it should, and then it goes back to normal, then suddenly it's way off, and then it goes back to normal, then it's suddenly way off. Even the timing is way off. I remember last year there was a period when it got dark around 6:45 to 7, if I remember correctly, and then the very next day it was light until about 7:30, 7:45. Well, how do you explain that unless you've got a wobble?
Yeah,
and
now,
if it's
Stuart, I was just going to say, Stuart, and now all of a sudden we now have something they're calling rivers in the sky coming in, hammering the West Coast with an unprecedented moisture, and it's like a river coming out of the Pacific Ocean, which is heated up, by the way, and is having an incredible amount of volcanic, under ocean activity. But we've got rivers of water coming in, which joins the major winter storms, and we're being hammered.
Well, that's what the bots said. They said that about 2, maybe 3 years ago, that the term atmospheric rivers was showing up in their data. And lo and behold, about a year later, atmospheric rivers became part of the the normal weather nomenclature. So another hit, I guess, for the bots. And, those things are dangerous because they can dump so much water in such a short period of time. And a couple out in California, they're not in California now, but they were. And they own some property out there, and we heard that because it's so dry out there, and now they're afraid of these flash floods, they're actually digging these huge, huge holes. They're filling them with gravel of some type, rock, and they intend to catch the water so that they can pump it out because they're so dry now. So leave it to people to be, particularly farmers, to be innovative, by digging these huge holes and capturing all the rainwater. Of course, the state will probably say that water belongs to them. They'll probably arrest all the farmers for doing that, but that's the way it goes. I wanted to talk a little bit about this shooting out there in Fort Lauderdale, because now we've got a pilot, evidently, airline pilot, who said, and he claims he is a skilled rifleman, that he saw at least one additional shooter and heard loud percussions in Terminal 1. So their story down there is falling apart again.
Well, it appears, and I've heard a lot of information from different people talking about this is a classic false flag, it appears, from what they're gleaning. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the information goes in a black hole whenever they investigate a false flag. It just vanishes. There's an interesting Barry Rothman code he just did on that. You want to hear it?
Yes, I do. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Barry Rothman just did a Tor code on the Fort Lauderdale airport shooter, and in the code he was checking to see if it was fired by ISIS. Now, there was 5 words that were in the matrix, and here I'll give them to you. Number 1, E. Santiago. Number 2, shooter. number 3, terrorist, number 4, ISIS, number 5, insane. So if you really put a couple of dots together there, Stuart, the guy that did the shooting, apparently the Torah Code claims he's an insane ISIS terrorist. How's that?
Well, yeah, and he claimed that he was programmed by our own government. So maybe he's telling the truth. That reminds me so much of the early movies years ago we saw about Manchurian candidates and mind control stuff that was going on and all of that data. And matter of fact, people can look at the Bourne movies, Jason Bourne. I mean, it's pretty classic. That's what happened to him, basically. He got mind controlled and given a new identity, and then he messed up and went freako and wasn't sure who he was. But here we are, the Torah codes again, they seem to be punching holes in reality and showing the truth. One of the things, let me add this real quick, recently I read a Torah code from Barry Rothman where he had investigated the hacking of the DNC, and I said the Torah code came out with Putin and Russia and, of all people, Netanyahu and Israel. And if you'll remember, what's interesting was I watched Fox News yesterday, and they had someone on that was talking about how interesting it was that Obama and Hillary had been involved in trying to unseat Putin in Russia during his previous election, and Netanyahu in Israel during his previous election. So it appears tit for tat, and I hope I don't find anybody named Tat, but. Here we are with the Matrix again, saying this is true. And so is it so much that they are so bad to us, or is it by chance they're doing to us what we've already done to them? Well, I think what they're really screaming about is they did not hack according to the governors of the states. None of the elections were bothered. And I think what they're really screaming about is the emails from Podesta and Hillary Clinton. And who gave those? I mean, Assange has said, we didn't get it from Russia. I think the indication is they got it from somebody within the DNC itself. But here's something that's going on. I wanted to talk to you and get your opinion on this. The feds are taking control of the elections. Department of Homeland Security has issued a decree. So they're going to take over the elections. Now, having done that, could they not say then the elections are in error and probably need to be reviewed before Trump would be sworn in? In other words, let's delay it. What the DHS said was it's critical infrastructure now.
Yeah.
And it ties right into the War Powers Act, the NDAA, and emergency powers. So I'm beginning to wonder, if you watch a CNN or any of the others, they're screaming bloody murder about this Russian hacking of the elections, which is pure baloney. There is absolutely no proof in that report that was issued, no proof whatever that they actually did anything to change the elections. Now, the release of the emails, however, probably did change a lot. So I guess one could argue where those came from and who did it. Maybe that's where Netanyahu, and I did read an article where Netanyahu was set to release a bunch of emails, but I could never vet the article, so I couldn't really say whether it was true or false. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I haven't, but you know well as I do that a lot that goes on in Israel, you don't hear a lot about it. I mean, you just get little pieces of information, but I'll tell you what's interesting. This whole thing, it appears is to bring down Trump before he ever gets into office. And you know, when I sit back and watch the Department of Homeland Security, you know, I was a cop before that came into existence. And when I watched that begin to be formed, Stuart, it appears to me, you know, the CIA is to be involved in anything other than domestic. But it looks like, Stuart, we have developed a CIA, a domestic branch of the CIA, which they call the Department of Homeland Security, and people think is really what's watching out for them. The problem is Department of Homeland Security, hello, it's not watching out for you. It's watching out for what we call infrastructure. I've mentioned that term before, and you remember, Stuart, I said infrastructure is not people.
Yes, and I also remember
government taking care of government.
Yeah, and this is what DHS is. I think they're here to protect the government against the people of the United States, which is probably why they bought billions of rounds of ammunition that the military won't even approve. We could call them people ripping bullets, hollow points. And as you know, hollow points deadly. So why did they have to buy all that? Why did they have to buy all that, all the rifles? Why are they equipping? Why are they allowing UN trucks all over America? No, we're going down, and I don't know whether Trump is part of it. I watched him on his shows and when he was doing different programs, and he definitely does give Masonic hand signals virtually all the time. So I'm beginning to wonder if we're not in a Masonic war. And that does not, I don't mean to say either that Trump is not Cyrus, the new Cyrus. God uses anybody he wants. And I think this is exactly what is going on. And I know you've taken some flack by calling Trump the new Cyrus, but I think that's exactly who he is.
Well, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, recently I've seen some, matter of fact, Don Foreman sent me some stuff the other day, and some stuff from other people have came in to people that really intercede and pray. And they seem to be getting words from the Lord. If anybody wants to believe you hear the Lord, they're getting words from the Lord that people, since Trump won the election, they've sat back on their couch now, and there's no repentance at all in the nation. There's no repentance anywhere. And everybody's leaning back, giving a blow of relief, and here we go. Everything's going to be fixed. Well, it's not being fixed. And, I've got something interesting for people. I get hammered a lot over talking about Cyrus. If you look at Cyrus, and Cyrus really didn't come to help Babylon out a lot. It seemed that God's people were in trouble and prisoners and slaves in Babylon. And if you look today, what's the war been against the last 10 years in America? The Christians, of course. And so, Cyrus was sent by God, who he didn't even know God, but God sent him, and he took Babylon. And Stuart, do you remember anything after that being recorded about Babylon doing anything great, or was that about the end of Babylon?
That was the end of Babylon, yes. That was the end of Babylon. I was thinking, I'm not trying to confuse people when I call Trump another Cyrus. What I'm saying, and I asked the Lord, I said, I need one word that's not really confusing to give people to tell them how spiritual this is, this event. And he said, use the word judgment. He said, tell my people, this is judgment. Trump is judgment. Cyrus was judgment. Yes. Yep. The judgment against Babylon, and we are the modern Babylon. So all of this is preludes to us going down. Now, I noticed that Stan Dale, getting back somewhat to bad things, he posted David Wilkerson's vision. Earthquakes coming to the United States. The U.S. is going to experience in a not-too-distant future the most tragic earthquake in its history. One day soon, this nation will be reeling under the impact of the biggest news story of all modern times. It will be coverage of the biggest, most disastrous earthquake in history. The earthquake will cause widespread panic and fear. Without a doubt, it will become one of the most completely reported earthquakes ever. Television networks will suspend all their programming and carry all-day coverage another earthquake, possibly in Japan, will precede the one I see coming here. Well, Japan already had it. Remember? That's where the tsunami came from.
Yeah,
so
Fukushima.
That's already gone by. This is not the slightest doubt, he says, in my mind about this forthcoming massive earthquake on our continent. I believe it will be many times more severe than the San Francisco quake. I am not at all convinced that this earthquake will take place in California. In fact, I believe it is going to take place where it is least expected. This terrible earthquake may happen in an area that's not known as an earthquake belt. It will be so high on the Richter scale that it will trigger 2 other major earthquakes in the Aleutian Islands, which will result in a number of small earthquakes and aftershocks all along the west coast of the United States. So I guess he really doesn't know where this quake is going to hit, does he?
No,
but I think with what you're... Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to mention a related story was also on Dale's website. It given a warning, a video today, and it's but the headline of it is 2017 is the year America will experience the most catastrophic event, and this was by Lynn Liz, and it's basically pointing out and photographs of a mighty tsunami, and you know. Augusto Perez has recently had some cataclysmic and catastrophic dreams of earthquakes and tsunamis.
Well, maybe we could tie this into the Trump and how the government is trying to just stop him at every turn. They're pulling out all the plugs. I mean, they could have a false flag. They could collapse the economy through a derivative disaster. They could use this thing with Homeland Security and just say, well, the election's a fraud and we're not going to allow it to go forward. They got a number of things that they could actually do, but I wonder if that is tied in, if they try that, to a major disaster here, natural disaster, let alone all the storms we're having. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're really in a very... Like I've said, between now and Inauguration Day, it's really a very dangerous time. And also there's a report, Stuart, I wanted to mention of a general, an ISIS general, and hundreds of followers that have vanished. They've disappeared, and there was warning that they thought they had moved or migrated into Europe to do terror attacks. But is it possible? There is some data that they made their way to South America and up through Mexico. So we're getting warnings the last week or two about possible terror attacks coming out across the Mexican border, which relates to books I've been reading lately, fiction books.
Well, you know, you got the Bible, which is not a fiction book, and it says exactly the same thing, that we are already invaded with a 5th column, and they're going to rise up whenever the call is given. And I would expect that call to come anytime, actually, I guess. We're really in probably the most dangerous time in the history of the United States right now. I mean, there's a coup going on to try and make us a communist socialist nation, and according to the Bible, and maybe that's exactly what we're going to go to. Anyway, how do people reach you before we run out of space?
Oh, okay. The quickest way is my blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org. And I, along with others, have been under cyber attacks, so I've had to really monitor my replies to my blog lately, so I apologize to people if I didn't get you posted.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for coming on. Any parting shot? We got 30 seconds.
Well, I'm just, there is some move in Congress to try to run ahead of the UN Resolution 2334 against Israel. So we're watching that too.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for coming on with such short notice, and hopefully we can do something on Wednesday. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Night.